Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. I call to order the meeting of the Manassas Park governing body for Tuesday, October 1st, 2024. First, we have the approval of an amended agenda. Please strike 9B. It is not necessary in consent agenda. And please add 11C, which is code revision for remote participation. Are there any other changes to the agenda? Okay. Do we have a motion?
There, that's Dean. Real quick, were you going to add the ordinance for the property taxes?
Oh, okay. Do we need a consensus? Do we need a consensus from the governing body to add that? Dean?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to get voted on, so you want to add that as well?
Let me take the pulse of the governing body. Who would like to add that to the agenda? That would enable us to discuss it.
Me.
Okay, yes from Mike. Well, what do you think?
We can add it to discuss.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Yep.
Open for discussion.
Okay. Yes, Dean, and that would be 11D. We'll be adding, what is the title of that ordinance to?
Oh, to postpone the penalties and interest for delinquent personal property taxes.
Okay, thank you, Dean. So let me review the amended agenda. We strike 9B, we add 11C, code revision for remote participation, and 11D, which is delay personal property tax due date. Do we have a motion to approve the amended agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Next, please join us for a moment of silence, and Councilmember Carrera, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I don't think we have anyone signed up to make public comment, but is there anyone here who has not signed up but who would still like to make public comment? Seeing no one and hearing no one, we will move on. There is no public hearing, no recognitions. 7 is Senator Danica Rome is here to interact with us about the legislative agenda.
Oh, so already? All right.
I'm sorry.
So we're doing that already?
Can you please speak directly into the microphone?
Oh, I'm sorry, Madam Mayor. I just didn't know that we were doing that already, so great.
Okay. So you want, I guess the purpose is to take suggestions from us for, okay.
Sure. So,
Who would like to go first?
I'll be happy to start.
Oh, go ahead.
Like. So
Yes.
just for people watching at home, my name is Danica Rome. I'm grateful to represent you all right here in my new hometown city of Manassas Park. So I just moved in. I bought my condo in Manassas Park Station at the end of August, moved in September 8th. Got my driver's license updated 3 days later. So I also cast my first ever city ballot on the first day of early voting, which is now happening here Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. So I would like to congratulate you all on annexing a nearly 40-year part of Prince William County. That is a huge accomplishment for you all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're here to receive suggestions from
Yes.
us.
So yes, the very short version of this here is I am in my basically information gathering portion of the program here for how we are developing our legislative agenda for the 2025 Virginia General Assembly session. What this means is I have not filed my bills yet because I am still waiting from constituents and specifically from the 4 governing bodies that I represent between City of Manassas Park, City of Manassas, Town of Haymarket, and Prince William County. I need to know what it is that you all need. Now, previously, during the summer, I took the mic and I said, hey, I'd be happy to put in a budget amendment for y'all to take care of the streetlight project that y'all need for Manassas Drive. Still happy to do that. Here's the information that I still need from you all that I requested then is what federal grants have you all already applied for? How much city money is already allocated and dedicated for this? what other grants, what other funding mechanisms are you pursuing, and what's the total cost, how much do you want the state to cover?
Right.
Whatever that is, whatever the request from the city is, that's what I will do.
Okay.
So I'm happy to
Okay.
put that in for y'all.
We
That's-
appreciate
yeah.
that very much, and more information will be forthcoming from staff.
Yes.
Okay.
And we don't have a limit on budget amendments I can submit, but I do have a 20 bill limit on actual bills I can submit. So
Okay.
with that, the floor is y'all's.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who would like to go first?
Thank you, Senator, for coming out tonight. The only three things I recommend, and you're aware of our charter shift, that piece, and that'll be coming up soon, hopefully if it's accepted by the public hearing. Probably charter change. The other piece you and I have talked about, road safety, and this is something that's statewide and it's been talked about, maybe collaborating, adding more lighting and intersection lighting around, interstates and main roads. There's a lot of darkness and throughout parts of the Commonwealth I go to. The third piece is more for the state employees, not necessarily here. A lot of jurisdictions that aren't part of VRS allow sick leave to be used as service credit. VRS does not do that. And it's just a benefit to keep employees where if you use that, you can use it as a credit versus taking the low payout. So that's just some piece there. And I think you and I discussed it kind of literally just.
So, Madam Mayor, what I would tell the council member here is anytime you do with the VRS stuff, they have kind of a different deadline for budget everything compared to other legislation. VRS changes are also, we'll just say, the most complicated, not impossible,
Right.
the most complicated to get through the Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee as well as the House Appropriations Committee. And the last thing is you need to have pretty much the state government, in this case the administration, sign off on it. Because otherwise you'll either get it quashed in approps because they won't spend the money, or they'll say, well, it's not coming from the administration, it's not coming from the people who are running state government, therefore we're not going to do it.
Right.
So I'm willing to help work, willing to do it. It's just that takes a dance.
Yeah.
Regarding the lighting part, if you have ever driven from Suffolk County in Hampton Roads back up toward Richmond, or even just toward 95, and you didn't take the interstate to do it,
460?
it is. We'll just say it'll remind you you're alive.
I've driven it, 460 through all
Yeah,
county.
yeah. You take 460 at night. Woof! I
During the
visited.
day.
Yeah, I visited one of my colleagues there, Senator Jordan. She runs a wine shop. I was driving back to come back home. Oh my God, that was yes. The lighting thing is real. Like, I agree with you
And I know it's a
wholeheartedly.
grant thing, it's just.
My thing is making sure that our portion of I-66 is not only illuminated above, but making sure that we've actually got all the little strips on the roadway itself. One of the biggest complaints that I get from people in the western part especially is the lack of reflector lights on the road itself and lack of illumination. Because if you're coming in from Haymarket, Gainesville, even that portion of 234, either the Parkway or from Sudley Road, you can go into some serious problems with visibility for both merging as well as just getting over the bridge into Centerville. So yeah, I agree with you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Hey, thanks for coming out. Just kind of an awareness thing. I would love to see more electric vehicle support, whether it be funding for the infrastructure needed to charge the vehicles or just funding for the study to see if the grid is capable of handling more electric vehicles.
Okay, so Madam Mayor, I would tell the Vice Mayor here a few things. Number one, we have definitely had a lot of legislation, budget issues, everything that's gone into what can we do to expand our infrastructure for electrical charging stations, both at private facilities as well as, say, area rest stops. So for example, I'm not aware that the city of Manassas Park actually has an EV charger station anywhere at any of its gas stations or any other locations. I'm pretty sure the most frequent EV charge I have seen has been at the Vice Mayor's house. So with that said, there are a lot of members where this is really kind of in their bailiwick, happy to support. That legislation typically goes through the Commerce and Labor Committee. And so the four committees I sit on general laws, local government, privileges and elections, and what was that? And transportation. Thank you. So for those four, transportation, you might be able to get that to come through there, but typically that will go through commerce. So I'm, again, happy to work with you on that. Just know that there has been a lot of legislation that has gone in, some of which has been successful. And the bottom one on this, I'll also tell you, is Delegate David Reed. This is a big passion project for him in particular. He's out of Loudoun and Ashburn. So yeah, it's definitely on the forefront. But frankly, every time I see a gas station redevelop here or come online, I'm like, now would be a good time. Town Paint Market has it at their sheets, but we don't have it at our sheets.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Councilmember Javed, do you have any?
Yeah, I guess so. Sorry, can you repeat the committees again?
Yeah, sure. So transportation, I'll say it so I don't get that one wrong. Local government, I'm the vice chair, and Senator McPike from Prince William is the chair. So we have a nice little 1-2 punch. Also in the House, Katie Munden King from the eastern end of the county is chair of County Cities and Towns. I am also I'm also a member of General Laws, and I am a member of the Privileges and Elections Committee. That one also deals with our constitutional amendments. We will have 3 for sure that will be coming up next year. So just know that that process will begin again next year.
Okay. I guess I got a couple things I want to, I guess you can help us with. One, I know you've been working with the data centers throughout the region, not working with them, but
That's an interesting turn of phrase, Madam Mayor.
not working for them, with them, but it's like, I guess, trying to oppose, I guess, enact more legislation to regulate it.
So, Madam Mayor, I would tell the council member that I am so proud to be living in the one locality in Greater Prince William that has a 3-to-0 parks to data center ratio. And I hope it stays that way or even gets more slanted in favor of the parks. I will be filing a lot of bills this upcoming year regarding curbing data center sprawl. We filed 5 of them this year from me. All of those got punted over to JLARC for a study that is coming out in the next basically 2 months. So it'll be out, I think, by December 1st. And I will be reserving up to 5 spots in my legislative agenda for it. And I said up to, so we'll see what ends up coming out. But yeah, long story short with it is the industry's not happy with me, and I'm just fine with that because my constituents are.
Excellent. I mean, my question was, is there legislation that allows localities to actually do an assessment before any approval comes into play? I mean, how are we supposed to know the effects of water, electric?
Madam Mayor, I would tell the council member that I'm so glad he read my bill that I submitted this past year that got sent to JLARC for exactly requiring localities to have assessments done before voting on them. That then got changed to a May in Delegate Thomas's bill just to get it over to the Senate, and they still, on a permissive bill like this, still kicked it over to JLARC as I watched the data center lobby furiously texting members on the committee because the bill had gotten out, oh, you need to do a motion to reconsider, blah, 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 blah. It was Senator Subramanian and me against the world on this. And so, I mean, just, I'll keep up the fight, and I will give you all every regulatory power I can possibly grant you if the General Assembly will.
So it's like essentially stalled, I guess, or is that?
It went to, Madam Mayor, it went to study. So once it comes back from study, which is the next 2 months, then we'll hopefully have a lot of recommendations that will have come from JLARC. That's the Joint Legislative Audit Review Commission. What they do is they basically give us very deep dives and a series of recommendations for legislation to deal with any issue that the General Assembly assigns to them. Or something they pick themselves. In this case, the data centers, I had put in the budget amendment for it, but they picked it themselves, so we didn't have to do that.
Thank you. My next topic, I can't speak on behalf of the governing body, but something that we've discussed is establishing a quiet zone with the VRE here. And you being on the transportation committee, is there something that we could, I know it's a tough topic, but we're increasing our residential rooftops in the area, and it's just, we get complaints about the train noise. Is there somewhere we can have localities do a study for enhanced safety features that we could maybe pitch to the VRE or?
Sure. So, Madam Mayor, I would tell the council member in this case here that yours truly used to live over at the Elms at Signal Hill Station, which is basically a couple tape measures away from the train tracks. Did that for 2 years. So I am very well aware of our happy sound noise there. Here's the issue that you come with. We have good precedent that we established here in the city when we passed my bill for basically regulating where commercial or for test drives could happen, right? So we now prohibit them on Manassas Drive. So those vehicle test drives now have to go only on Euclid, right? Had bipartisan support in the House, so it was a bipartisan bill. Only bill I've ever had that did not have bipartisan support in the Senate, oddly enough, that still was signed into law. Passed on on a pure party line vote in the Senate. That was kind of weird, because go figure, of all the bills, that was the one that people were going to throw a fit about. Well, I think there's precedent in that in terms of establishing local authority to be able to do blank with basically private industry, which is, in this case, even though VRE's it's not exactly entirely private, but what I would suggest with this is, number one, we make a simple ask to VRE. Okay, what time and for how long are you using a horn? Are you using whatever else it is that makes a very loud amount of noise? Number two, is that based on a federal requirement in order for safety? For example, the city of Manassas, as you're pulling in, they have they post very loud, very vividly on like Prescott. Is it Prescott? Or Fairview? It's right about where the railroad tracks are over there.
Yeah,
but basically, as you're approaching Old Town, there's signs there that say where the quiet zone is and what quiet hours are. We don't have signs that say what our quiet hours are in Manassas Park. Maybe that's something that the city could do. I need to make sure that you all already have the authority to do that. You could also very much just be restating existing ordinance. I assume the city has a robust noise ordinance at this point. If that is included within it, you might already have the authority to just put that up there. But you're going to need to bring VRE and Norfolk Southern to the table on this, even though we are requiring the Norfolk Southern line and all. But you're going to need to bring them on the table, find out what they can do themselves, what we can make a request for them to do, what the Manassas Park governing body already has the authority to do, and then finally, barring a problem with all of that, if there's something that we can change in the Code of Virginia to empower you to do something, that's when I come in, in terms of like filing an actual bill.
Got it. Thank you. And then I guess there was a recent cell phone ban in schools enacted by the governor. And
Ish.
Excuse me?
Ish.
Oh. What I'm hearing from, I guess, parents is, it's hard to communicate with children, like, who's picking them up after school or school activities. And what the schools are experiencing is a high volume of calls to the office. Now, I think the school board might be more equipped to, answer any questions, but what I've heard is that some of the staff we're not there yet. So, they might come to us later asking for increased budget for increased personnel. So something like this that passes down from the state, to me, it is unfunded mandate, right?
So, Madam Mayor, what I would tell the council member in this case is that Senator Stella Perkarski has filed legislation regarding this. She's a former school board member from Fairfax County, lives right over the Prince William line, and she's taking the lead on doing this in a different way than the administration is. So if you just Google her name, Stella, State Senator Stella, Stella, last name Pekarsky. Fun fact, her original language is Greek. She will, or you'll be able to find the cell phone legislation that she's put in. And she's worked directly with the majority leader of the Senate on that. So there's going to be a lot of negotiating between the governor and the Senate on this.
Interesting.
Or the governor will just veto it, and then we'll just let the next election decide what the next cell phone policy of the state's going to be.
Exactly.
Yep.
And last topic, and I promise I'll be done after this.
Oh, I love this.
No,
This is
take your
great.
time, take your time.
The last topic was regarding schools again. The recent news that we hear about school shooting. I think the state did pass some security grants, but they're attached with local matches. And with a locality our size, to have enhanced security features in our schools, we would have to call for money up front, and then later, I guess, what I read is that they would reimburse us 6 months down the road. For a city like us, we're always tied for cash flow, you know, so my question is like, how can we, or, you know, at the state level, get these grants, but without the local matches? I mean, can't the state budget that into their budget for enhanced security features in our schools?
Madam Mayor, I would tell the council member in this case that if you're going to change the funding formula for how the state allocates money to localities for educational purposes, you're going to have 130, now there's 133 localities total, but some localities share education districts more or less. But you're going to have about 130 different fights on your hand. Here's the issue. Every time, for example, that we do a teacher pay raise, the way that the state has done it forever with this is we put up blank, so usually it's like state puts up 3%. And all right, all teachers will get this 3% right off from the top. Locality, if you match with 1 more percent, we will match your 1%. So basically what they're saying is, you give us an extra percent, we'll match that last part. So that will be the full 5% at that point. They want your skin in the game at some point. Here's what I can do. If you have specific shortfalls within any of our schools, then the nice thing with Manassas Park, small school district in terms of the number of buildings that you have, if Cougar Elementary School needs a security upgrade for blank, let me know. If Manassas Park Elementary does, if Manassas Park Middle, Manassas Park High School do. If any of those schools have an infrastructure, capital improvement project sort of thing, bring it to me. And if it's relatively affordable, as in 5 to 6 digits, let me put in a budget amendment to help you all out. And if we get it, great. If we don't, you know, at least we're getting the ball rolling, right? So those are little things I can help you with. But in terms of telling the city, no, you don't have to have any skin in the game on this, the Senate Finance Chair will laugh loudly and then move on to the next topic.
I see.
Yes, I see our former school board member nodding in agreement, having observed this up close.
Okay. Do you have any more follow-up questions?
I think those were, yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, okay.
Cool.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
It's not, thank you for coming tonight,
Yeah, of
Senator.
course.
It's not necessarily a question, but, so we're going to be celebrating our 50th anniversary, July 1 of next year.
Mhm.
So we may be reaching out to you to find out how at the state level we can have something, a proclamation, whatever the decorum is, to celebrate.
So, Madam Mayor, I would tell the council member, I am super excited then to put in a commending resolution for the state celebrating, or for the city celebrating 50 years as a city from its transformation from a town. And fun trivia fact, it was Senator Chuck Colgan who put in the charter change legislation for both cities, actually. It was actually, even though you're saying it's next year, it was technically 1976, I believe, although you have lifetime residency in the city, and I don't.
July 1, 1975 is when we became a city.
That's what,
Right, Ms. Connor?
I think it's 77.
I believe so, it's 1975.
Yeah. Yeah, July 1, 75,
Okay.
because the school system was up and running by 77. So, actually, we can go on the website and we double check.
Right. So Chuck got in because it was what? He was in there for 40 years. His last year was 2011. So was he really in there 71?
He might have been. I mean, he was around for
I
as
thought he
long
was
as I
in
can remember.
75.
He-
No. He got in 75. Yeah.
He and Parrish wrote, that's
Yeah.
who I always remember. But it was 1975 we became a city, July 1.
Yeah. So anyways, I'm happy to, Madam Mayor, I'm happy to put in commending resolution,
Thank
something
you.
to celebrate the 50 years. Like,
Thank you.
totally fine with that.
Thank you.
No objection at all. And then what we could probably do is just have a big thing out front.
Okay.
Yep.
And
We've got
hopefully a
whole-
couple of businesses will be open then too.
We have a whole committee.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other? Yes, ma'am.
So we had the domestic violence forum yesterday. And I don't know if you heard, but we're now part of the lethality assessment program due to funding. So I don't know if that's something that we could get a grant for, or maybe, talk to you about to see if there's any way that we can be part of that program to help domestic violence victims.
So, Madam Mayor, I was Glad to join both you, Councilmember Maya, as well as Vice Mayor Mensing at the event last night. It was, it was deep, and we definitely had not only, I would say, a really good discussion, but talking with Delegate Maldonado afterward, I think a lot of people had to really just, the kind of takeaway from what we had at the community center last night was you had a lot of people reliving trauma and a lot of people in that room where even if you weren't speaking, you were probably thinking of something in your life where either you have been the victim or a survivor of domestic violence, or you know someone who did, or you watched it happen. And other thing I'll say before I get to the grant part on that, I counted 5 men in attendance. It was overwhelmingly women who were there. And just as a personal aside on this, my plea is for more men to please come to events like this and just please be there to see something like this, because it almost can turn into a little bit of a trauma circle when a lot of us in a room together are being like, hey, here's how this horrible thing happened. And we want that sharing, and we want the safe place that comes with women speaking to other women especially. And at the same time, we also know that this has to be a two-way street, right? So with that said, for any grant assistance that comes from the state level, if you need me to write a letter, or if there's a private grant that's available, if you need me to write a letter on behalf of the city, done. You just tell me when and where you need it. I'll work directly with city staff, and we'll put my ink to it. Within 48 hours of submitting the request. If you want a budget amendment to deal with something specific like that, I would need basically a very clear directive from the city. Here's the final ask that I have on this. When you have charter changes, and I guess, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Carrera and I, we can just discuss offline whatever else it is you need. I've carried charter changes before, it's fine. If you need charter changes, my request is always that the governing body votes on the thing that you want, and you send me exactly the legislation and the language that you want. Because then I give that to our attorneys over at the Division of Legislative Services. They put the legalese to it. They send it back to me. I review that with you all. You all good with this? Great. And then we submit it. I then have the evidence of the city has put this forward. The city wants to do this. And if I have all that, we call that rocket docket down in Richmond. That means, unanimous, next vote, have a nice day. And again, I'm vice chair of the committee, which means I get a little bit of clout on local gov. It's cool. That said, for budget amendments, same thing. I need a request from the city because it gives me a little extra oomph in front of the finance committee and to the other members, where I can say, this is a constituent service request. This is not me just pulling money out of thin air and saying, oh, please, this would be great for my district so I can get political points. I really need, the city is asking for assistance with this. Can you please help us out?
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so.
Do you have
my
anything,
turn.
Madam Mayor?
My continuing interest is transportation.
So is mine.
And
Neat.
it's, not only does it spur economic development, but it's a quality of life thing for residents. So I would request, and I'm sure this is already afoot somewhere in the General Assembly, to restore complete funding streams to the NVTA. And if it could be done without touching any other existing transportation revenue streams. We don't want to rob Peter to pay Paul, that type of thing.
So, Madam Mayor, I'll tell you on that one in particular, you might remember yours truly was the only member of the entire legislature who voted against the state portion of the grocery tax repeal, specifically because they did not make transportation funding whole out of that. A portion of that goes to maintenance for roads and stuff, right? I stood up on the floor, and this was when I was in the House, I peppered the patron of that bill, who's a delegate from Roanoke County. Get along with him, great. Different sides of the issue, we'll put it that way. I said, hey, you're making local government funding whole. Is that still gonna be happening? Yes. You're making education funding whole. Still gonna do that? Yep. Transportation is taking a hit, a 9-digit hit with this. What are you going to do to make that whole? And that's 9 digits over the biennium. Nothing. Oh, transportation has a surplus. It's fine. When the Commonwealth of Virginia has more than 900 fatalities year after year, including just 2 years ago, 1,005 of them, when we have 3 consecutive years of more than 800 preceding that, you cannot tell me that we are fully funding transportation. No, we are not. And what happened for defunding of the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority, my first year in office, the governor had submitted an amendment on a bill to make sure that we could have stayed whole back home. And on a party line vote, it died, 51-49. I held my hair in both hands as that happened, and I said to myself, oh my God, what have we done? It is so frustrating to have to fight to not gut transportation funding, let alone get more of it. We have had one successful bill in a major way since I've been there on transportation funding, and that was HB 1414 in 2020 from the Speaker of the House. And we did have one other thing in 2018. We did eliminate the cap on the Northern Virginia Regional Motor Fuels Tax. And so that actually gives us a lot of money that PRTC uses, both for OmniRide as well as VRE. All of that said, I would love to do that. I don't think right now in the upcoming 2025 year that there is the will in the General Assembly to do it.
Okay,
But that does not mean I'm not optimistic for future years.
sure.
Just know that we are in a defensive posture right now of simply trying to not further gut transportation funding. You might remember in 2022, the governor had proposed gutting the gas tax that we get, right? The revenue from gas tax. That between that and the grocery tax, we were talking over $700 million that was going to be lost to transportation revenue over the biennium. I threw a fit about that on the floor. In each of the last 3 years, I have submitted legislation to take 10% of general fund surplus dollars to dedicate it to the Virginia Highway Safety Improvement Program. I've been shot down by Republicans and I've been shot down by Democrats on this. I am looking for any friend possible on either side of the aisle in either chamber who understands that of the 3 leading causes of unnatural death in Virginia, transportation fatalities is always second or third. It's usually tied with gun violence, and it's always behind opioid overdoses. So however I can fight and battle for NVTA, I'm all in.
Sure, thank you so much. There's another thing, and I know this is quite difficult, but it would really be great if the General Assembly could find a substitute for the gas tax and make it a slow transition from the gas tax to whatever is chosen, because we're going to be probably consuming less and less gas, and it's going to be more and more difficult to support, like, for example, the PRTC.
So,
Yeah.
Madam Mayor, regarding the gas tax portion of it, like what had been proposed before was a gas tax holiday and all the other sort of stuff with that. We, on the Transportation Committee, I have been awaiting anyone to provide me what that alternative dedicated revenue stream would be. The gas tax is a declining revenue stream in the long haul.
Yes.
Currently, it is still a significant driver of the transportation money we do have. Any transition that we would have to another dedicated revenue stream to replace that would have to be phased in over several years.
Okay.
That said, what I will tell you from our constituents, though, is they tend, rather than gas tax, they tend to make the loudest complaints over the personal property tax regarding cars. I've been having conversations with commissioners of revenue, including the city of Manassas, one, Tim DeMaria, trying to figure out what would be our alternative to this. And the biggest issue is that localities want the control over the revenue stream that comes from it. They don't want it to, they simply don't trust the General Assembly to always give you money. And You are correct in your assumption with that. Yes, the General Assembly will gut it given a chance.
Wow. Well, I'm very relieved to hear that it will be a slow phasing in, because there can be, as you know, unintended consequences. Yeah. Are there any other comments for Senator Roan? Okay.
All right, if anyone, Madam Mayor, doesn't have my personal cell, the person to your left does. So always just feel free to call me anytime that you need some. My Chief of Staff, Jesse's been taking notes this whole time. So please reach out to
Sure.
my team. For people watching at home, you can always email me at Senator Rome, that's SenatorRoem at senate.virginia, spelled out, .gov.
Thank you so much. Staff will be sending you more complete verbiage on the things that we've talked about tonight.
Great, thank you,
Yeah,
Madam Mayor, for the
thank you.
invitation. Good to see all y'all, and have a great rest of your night.
And happy birthday. Yesterday was
Oh,
your birthday.
40,
Happy birthday.
yeah, yeah, I'm still hiding grays under here, it's great. All right, have a good day, y'all.
Take care. Thank you so much. Okay, no presentations. Moving on to consent agenda. Consent agenda consists of approval of the minutes of July 30th and September 17th, 2024.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to 10A. 10A, First Amendment to Comprehensive Development Agreement.
Good evening, this is my issue. You may remember this was on the agenda previously, but we pulled it off because there was an issue with the formula, not an issue, but we were asked to kind of take a look at the formula for the ADUs, WDUs. Yvette Monty, who's representing the city, has come up with some new language that's in your packet. In the red line version of the exhibit to that First Amendment. The First Amendment itself would allow for the last 70 units. If you may remember, the Comprehensive Development Agreement withholds 70 units from final construction until the commencement of construction on the theater. Because the city is actively negotiating with B&B right now to sell that property directly to B&B and then have them build the theater, we've been asked if we would be willing to amend the agreement and allow Stanley Martin to build all of the units in phase 2 of the project at the same time. The reason being is that if they have to withhold 70, then they're just not going to move forward because it doesn't make any sense to build 70 and then withhold another 70. So they'll just do it all at the same time, which would be a revenue loss for the city. I think it was put out there that every 3 months of delay would cost the city about $250,000 in tax revenue on those units overall. So the idea would be that since the city is in control of the theater, and the purpose of putting that in initially was to make sure that Norton Scott actively pursued getting a theater, and they're not really a part.
We lost them.
They would be able to get the. I'm sorry.
We
Someone say
lost,
something?
yeah, we lost you there for about 15 seconds.
Oh my! What did I say at the last? What was I talking about at last?
Well, if you could just say the last 5 sentences over, that'll cover it.
Okay, so the original comprehensive development agreement had put in this requirement of Norton Scott to actively pursue an entertainment industry for that site. Okay, and they've done that. The city has taken over, and so Norton Scott really doesn't have any control over what we're doing anymore. So the whole purpose of that was to make sure we get something there. The city's now actively pursuing that, so it doesn't really serve a purpose anymore to require that, because once the city enters into an agreement with B&B, the requirement for Norton Scott to help us goes away. And since we're trying to get this done within the next few months, that means all they really need to do is just wait us out if they wanted to, and then they'd be able to build it. Now, as I said, waiting a 3-month period, which essentially would be January, would be about $250,000 revenue loss for the city. in taxes. That's what I've been told. So it makes sense for the city to try to do this now instead of later, especially since we now have 4 ADU/WD or affordable dwelling unit workforce development or dwelling units that have been they've agreed to do. Okay, and if you remember in previous discussions, for ADUs, WDUs, typically when you sell the property, they value those at 0 when they're trying to figure out the amount they're going to pay for the property. So we built into this agreement the city giving back the cost for those 4 units that was built into the purchase price. We put it into escrow. We're going to put it into escrow though, so it's not just we're giving it over. We're going to wait. They will have to actively, they being Stanley Martin, will have to actively market the ADUs and WDUs for a period of 6 months, and that's actively marketing individual ones. However, the entire project will include language stating that there are 4 ADUs/WDUs in the whole project. So there should be sufficient amount of time for people in, say, Section 8 rental housing to be aware of this and put in their application and be able to have a reasonable expectation they can get selected. The program, the selection will be through the city. There will also be covenants that will be placed on these properties if in fact they do sell. And after a 30-year period, I believe it's 30-year period, when they sell it, if they sell it, they'll be able to sell it at market rates. Then half of the profits will come to the city for a trust fund for affordable housing. So it's a long-term solution, or a long-term assistance, I should say, for the city. Now, if those units don't sell or have an active contract within that 6-month period of active marketing, then the money will come back to the city and they'll be able to sell that unit market rates. So it's a unit by unit basis. So it's a win for the city, and then we get these units. Everybody is paying. So the city's putting in the money from the purchase price. Norton Scott is going to get less from Stanley Martin as a result, and Stanley Martin's going to get less because they're going to sell them for less. So anyway, it's a 3-party contribution, if you will, to those ADUs and WDUs. So with that, I'll answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you, Dean. Comments or questions? Comments or questions? Okay. Ma'am, go ahead.
Oh, no, it just came to mind, and Yvette would probably know this answer better than anybody. There is a shortage right now, right, of affordable housing that folks can use, like for if they have a Section 8 voucher or any type of assistance.
Good evening.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. In this area, there's a shortage of housing for folks that pay for housing using assistance, right?
I would say there's a shortage in general, definitely. And we could see that in our, the study that we did for the city. There is definitely a shortage for people that make less than 80% of the area median income. And the assistance that you're talking about, the housing choice voucher, those vouchers are available for people that make less than 30% of the area median income. So that's considered very low income per HUD.
Either way, though, the chances of it sitting, of someone not
being able to approve?
Right, or taking advantage of us having the ADU or the workforce development is very slim.
Actually, our policy is targeting the households that make less than 70%, that's for the ADUs, and less than 80% for the WDUs. So that this policy is not really targeting the people that make the households that make less than, let's say, 60%, 50%, because it would be hard for them to be approved for a loan to buy one of these units.
Okay, I think that answers my question. I had a lot of thoughts going on there. The long and the short of it is the chances of it not being used for ADU or WDU is kind of slim.
I would say it's slim. I mean, I have seen other jurisdictions, programs. I worked for one for 5 years, the homeownership division actually in Fairfax County, and there's always abundance of demand for the units. There's never a shortage of demand. It's probably 100 people per unit.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
You're welcome.
Okay, comments? Any other? Okay, there are two motions attached to this item. The first recommended motion is that the governing body approve and adopt a revised ADU, WDU policy that incorporates a new formula for determining the maximum price for affordable dwelling units and workforce dwelling units as presented and subject to final city attorney review.
Moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. The next motion is that the governing body approve and authorize the mayor to sign a First Amendment to Comprehensive Development Agreement for City Center Phase 3 as presented and subject to final review by city attorney.
Moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thanks, everybody, and thank you, Dean. Okay, moving on to 11A, Connor Center Pond refit, and that would be Calvin. Welcome, Calvin.
Good evening, Mayor Rischel, Vice Mayor Mensing, members of council, residents, staff, and guests. I'm Calvin Odell, the Director of Community Development. Connor Center Pond Number 1 is a stormwater detention facility about 1,000 feet behind us here that is at the end of the village, 2/2s, and penned in by the businesses on Owens Drive. Pond Number 1 has a very large drainage area, which made it a perfect candidate for our early TMDL reduction targets. In 2014, we initiated that design through Bowman Consulting to retrofit the pond from a dry pond into a wet pond to gain nutrient reduction and suspended solid reduction. When it was originally designed, it was under the assumption that we were years away from future downtown development, and that everything would be treated on site after that. Any new development coming in would be forced under the new regulations to provide on-site treatment. But the pace of the PPA that developed this facility that we're in the village, residential and commercial, and also a memorandum from DEQ sort of extending permission to use regional facilities, made that assumption invalid. And Capitol Park and Super Concrete's expansion were considered in Bowman's plan when they first did the Pond 1 retrofit, but the village development on the Bays Tract was not. So since the Bays Tract is now densely developed and in the Pond 1 plan, that area was considered undeveloped. In order to preserve the nutrient reductions that we anticipated, we have to do some redesign of the Pond 1 retrofit project now. And additionally, the village development put some stream areas in hard pipe, underground pipe, and that needs to be reflected in the plan before we finally submit to DEQ for review. And aside from the plan revision itself, actually changing the stream to hard pipe and changing the calculations to get our TMDL reduction credits, we also wanted to have some construction-related services and some RFP-related services. Have Bowman go ahead and prepare the RFP for the construction of the pond and be with us through the RFI process on that, and also to be with us through the construction, since they are designers, to answer any RFIs that come up during construction. So the estimate from Bowman to survey, update the plan, and provide services for the project is $74,096.91. Staff, as always, recommends a small contingency of 5%. That's $3,704.85 to be added to the spending limit to keep things moving should the need arise. And this brings the total not to exceed that we would be asking for to $77,801.76. Staff recommendation is the governing body approve this task order with authorization for the city manager to sign, subject to city attorney review.
Thank you, Calvin. Are there any comments or questions? Comments or questions? Okay, the recommended motion is that the governing body approve and authorize the city manager to sign task order number 2024-15 with Bowman Consulting Group Limited to provide design services for Connor Center Pond 1 to accommodate the Village at Manassas Park development for a cost not to exceed $59,336.91, and to provide surveying services for a cost not to exceed $14,760, along with an overall 5% contingency of $3,704.85, for a total cost not to exceed $77,801.76 as presented, subject to final city attorney review.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Calvin. Okay, 11B is Third Amendment to Purchase and Sale Agreement. Is that you, Dean?
That is me once again. Yes, this is this is for phase 2 of City Center, and this is the piece that is where the city currently has a social services office, and then the Artena apartment complex behind that. There's an undeveloped portion of this that originally was proposed as a senior assisted living facility and then an office building. That was changed to allow for an apartment complex, just like the Artena building, and an office building. But originally, the requirement was that they would not be able to pull permits to build until permits have been pulled for both the office building and the restaurant across the railroad tracks on property across from the Palisades. And then they would not be able to get a certificate of occupancy until they had gotten certificates for both of those buildings as well. They later, after City Hall was developed, the pad site next to City Hall became available for a restaurant, and the steakhouse that they had proposed across the railroad tracks, they had recommended moving it on over to the City Hall site, which was very much supported. And then so we amended, or you amended the agreement again to allow for either the restaurant across the railroad tracks, same conditions, or that they would have an active lease for the building next to City Hall for the steakhouse. But they still have the same requirement for the office building, to be able to start that office building as well. Unfortunately, when they went out to try to get a loan for the office building, apparently 2 lenders turned them down and said, essentially, office lending is frozen. The office market nationwide, the commercial office market nationwide is in a glut situation, and it's going to be like that for the foreseeable future. So anyway, once again, because this is something that the city has already approved, they are ready to go with the apartment building. This request is that they be allowed to do that, and because they can't go for the office right now, they can't get a loan for it. The recommendation is that, or the request is that they be able to build the apartments now. They're still required to build the office on that property, and they would do that once the market supported that, but they can't do that right now. The requirement now would just be that they wouldn't be able to get a certificate of occupancy for the apartment complex until that restaurant had been opened for at least 3 months to patrons for general public for both lunch and dinner. So and that's what's before you now is that Third Amendment.
Okay, thank you, Dean.
I'll take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Dean. Comments or questions?
So Dean, on the off chance that we don't approve this, what would be the impact on the city?
The city just wouldn't get any tax revenue from the apartment complex. I don't know if you remember, the previous city manager had presented to the governing body at one time a table that showed the revenue generated and the drain on city services for various types of residential dwelling units. And apartment complexes were seen as one of the best ones for generating more revenue than they took, generating revenue that exceeds the amount of city expenditures to support it. The reason is that typically are small families without school-age children or no children, or single individuals, they typically they're more likely to take mass transit, the VRE, so they aren't putting as much wear and tear on the roads, and that's held up with the first Artena building, and then also the apartments across the street from City Hall. We were able to amend that parking agreement with Hosta, the owner of that, because they weren't using much of their parking spaces, because the people that are living there liked the idea of walking to the VRE. So they tend to drain city services less than, say, a townhome that has children that are high school age and school age children, or have people that have two incomes, that a lot of vehicular traffic on the roads. So overall apartment complexes tend to be revenue generators for a city instead of a drain on resources. So if you don't do it, it's just going to sit vacant until the office market picks up, which could be 2-3 years or more from now. Who knows? It's been down ever since COVID. So until people start working in offices again, it's going to be a problem. So short answer is just you're not going to realize the revenue as early as you otherwise would have.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or
You're welcome.
questions? Comments or questions? No? Okay. Okay, thank you, Dean. The recommended motion is that the governing body approve and authorize the city manager to sign a third amendment to purchase and sale agreement with EP14 LLC and SAMRDDHI Group LLC as presented and subject to final city attorney review.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you, Dean. Okay, moving on to 11C, code revision for remote participation. Oh, you're still up, Dean.
I guess I'm still up. I'm going to be up for a couple more, I think.
Yes,
So,
I think you are.
So the city here has a current policy that allows remote participation. However, the enabling legislation was recently updated this last year, effective July 1st, which changed a lot of what, it expanded the reasons that someone could remote participate. It also reduced some of the requirements, and I won't go into too much detail, but the policy that I presented is essentially it's almost verbatim from the state code, except for the special instructions portion, which is taken from the previous policy, and that really is just requires that the person who is remotely participating has to make sure that they have a good setup, that we're not going to hold up a meeting because their preferred way of participating is not, goes down or something. So it puts the onus on them, but it also means the governing body has to provide, for them to do whatever their preferred way is, if it's possible. The key thing here is that the original policy had included a requirement that the governing body back in 2015 thought was prudent to prevent or prohibit participation in closed meetings. Okay, there's no such restriction in the state code, so there's no reason to do that other than the governing body wanting to do that. So that was kind of the impetus behind this, was to remove that requirement. And then there's...
Dean, you blinked out again. Dean.
Sorry, I broke up for a second there. Effective July 1st, you have to approve a policy annually. So even though we're doing it on October 1st, it says at least once annually, I'm sorry. I would suggest that we just make this just a part of the process for the annual meeting in July. That way we don't forget. We can look at the latest legislation, update it that way, and then we won't have any problems with people participating in the future. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
with that, I'll answer any questions. Yeah.
Comments or questions?
No.
There are none. Dean, a motion did not accompany this paperwork. Can you state a motion?
Yeah, I recommend the governing body approve and adopt a revised policy for remote participation of governing body members in their meetings as presented and subject to final city attorney review. And the final city attorney review is just because, I whipped this out this afternoon and I'm always finding some comma or something I didn't put in there. So I might have to, go in there and fix those kind of things. I don't want to have to bring it back to you.
Yeah, okay. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to 11D. We have one-time extension of the due date for personal property tax. You're still up, Dean.
Yes, I am. So I prepared this just because, as everyone's aware, or at least most people are aware, the payment portal for credit card payments is not available to residents. And that's created a big problem in that not everybody's comfortable using ACH, that's automated clearinghouse transactions, where they basically pull the money right out of your checking account. And the lines are excessively long, of course, at City Hall for everybody, and people have to take off time for work. And so it's very inconvenient, and I know of at least a few people who have said they're not going to wait anymore and they're going to come back later. So it's this year would do essentially what I believe the treasurer said she was going to do, she wanted to do, which was just not postpone the due date, but just not start assessing penalties and accruing interest until 30 days later. I think she said actually November 1st, but this here gives a full 30 days because in reading the chatter amongst the governing body, I think there was desire for a 30-day period. So this pushes as long as you paid the personal property taxes due for tax year 2024, okay, this only applies to tax year 24. So if you have delinquent taxes from previous years, you're still accruing penalty and interest on that. This is just for this year. And if you pay it all by November 5th, then you won't have any penalties or interest. But starting November 6th, if you haven't, then you'll get a penalty assessed and you'll start accruing interest. So basically just pushes everything by a month.
Dean, my understanding was that Patty did not recommend this.
Well, I don't think she wanted to. Well, I haven't spoken to her, so I can't speak for her. I understand that she had intended to not charge penalties and interest
Right.
For people, but there was no deadline, no date. When I asked before, I think she said the end of the month, the end of October. But we need to have something in writing. We can't just have that, and I don't think she has the authority to do that on her own.
Okay.
I mean, she does have the authority when it comes to penalties and interest, but I think we should give some cover to her. And the governing body has the authority, per state code, to go ahead and set what penalties and interest they want to charge and have accrued. So
Yeah.
you do have this authority. If you want, I would recommend you do it, only because it provides some certainty for the people out there, and it makes it much more easy to defend legally.
Just so that we go into this with our eyes open, is there a likelihood that delaying PPT will also cause a delay in the real estate?
Well, that has happened in the past. I know that,
Yeah.
and it's caused kind of a domino effect. So we may be back here asking for postponement for real estate tax deadline or penalties and interest again. We've done this in the past. The problem is every time we do this, we're delaying when we're getting that money. We're not getting interest in our accounts, so it is costing the city a substantial amount of money by doing this. So, and I don't know how much, but it is not insubstantial.
I was hoping for an estimate of how much the city would be losing, how much interest.
I wouldn't be able to provide that. I'd have to go to staff for that.
I'll need to look that up. I can provide that tomorrow if you like. I don't have that top of mind right now.
Okay, because that would be, we should have that information before we vote.
I guess the issue is that they're due, the 4th or the 5th?
To do Friday.
But question, why would real estate be postponed? Because we're assuming that.
What happens is, when they work on these, they allow for payments later like this, then the people in those offices are not working on real estate, they're still working on personal property. So it basically just it makes them more busy at a time when they would otherwise be working on real estate bills. So they're still doing this stuff. So it just kind of bleeds over. It's not a direct day for day or anything like that. It's just that they become busier for real estate taxes because they've spent so much time later on in the year on personal property taxes.
Sort of
Does that
like an
make any
unintended
sense?
consequence.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, I understand that. I mean, I think when she emailed us, she said she had a big majority of people already paid. So I think a small batch shouldn't hold up real estate tax if it's just a small number of people.
And if she was planning to,
So, I mean, just
right, she wasn't planning to, based on what we've
increase it
heard,
anyway.
read.
So right now, it's just an assumption that real estate would be delayed, which I don't think it should be
Yeah.
based on
Well, I don't think we're assuming, we're just saying there's the potential for that.
potential, yeah. But I think I'm pretty confident in the department that they could get the property tax
Yeah.
over and done with in the next couple of days.
I would
Even
really,
with the extension.
yeah, I would really love to know how much interest we're gonna lose on those funds.
But
Do we know what we lost the last time? No. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Yes,
I
ma'am?
would just say, in light of the portal being down and the reported long lines waiting to pay, I do think that we should extend the deadline.
Okay.
And I'm going to second that, or I know it's not a motion, but again, it's unacceptable. The portal is down. It's not down anywhere else in the Commonwealth of Virginia, 95 counties, 38 cities. And Prince William County, for no reason, just to accommodate their residents, they waited 2 more months. They extended theirs to December 5th. And I know we talk about the inconvenience for the treasurer's office. What about the inconvenience to the residents who have to leave their work? What about their interest and their time and their sick leave and they're not taking pay to having to come in here because the system's down? When is their consideration over the treasurer's consideration or the commissioner of revenue's consideration? And we have extended the real estate in the past separate from this. Those are 2 different things. And again, I don't want to see the city lose, but I don't want to see residents lose. So I support extending this for 30 days. Thank you.
And I don't think anyone's saying that we are putting one interest above another. I don't think anyone has said that.
Okay.
And we certainly don't intend to,
Okay.
yeah. Any other comments or questions?
Just that if, it sounds like the treasurer was already going to informally give a grace period.
Mhm.
So I don't see a downside in formalizing that grace period.
Mhm.
And to echo what the city attorney said, at least we'll have a start and end date for that extension.
Okay, okay. Any other comments or questions? Keith, it would be helpful to know that information, even if it's after the vote, because I think it will inform future votes. If this should happen again, PPT is likely to be delayed. I think the governing body should know that information, if we can. Thank you. Dean, would you recite the motion, please?
Yes, I recommend the governing body approve an ordinance to extend the date on which fees will be imposed and interest will accrue on delinquent real estate or personal property tax for tax year 2024 as presented.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to, this is second public comment time. Is there anyone who would like to make public comment? Seeing no one and hearing no one, let's move on to city manager report.
Just want to thank Kenny and the library staff for their quick reaction over the weekend when we had the leak. So far, remediation is going well. We found no further damage, no mold, so I think we're on track to finish in the next 2 weeks or so. So the impact for residents is that the library will be closed for 2 weeks, and most likely the splash pad will not be turned on for the rest of the season because we're going to winterize here in a month. So.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay. Dean, we do have a closed session. Dean, would you please read us into closed session?
Yes, I recommend the governing body go into closed meeting to discuss and consider candidates for the position of city manager pursuant to paragraph 1 of subsection 2.2-3711A of the Code of Virginia.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll take a 5-minute break.